And here he is, Stephen Costello. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, Emmanuel, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm so glad. So Stephen is a friend of mine for so many years. We worked together, a tenor, international tenor with a very beautiful timbre and beautiful voice, a stellar career, also a great presence on stage. We worked together at the Chicago Lyric. We worked together in Dallas, and we worked together at the Met, among other things. And it's not enough, and I can't wait to be on the stage, if ever there is a stage open to us very soon. And I'm glad you're free today. You're free. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've been free for the past couple of months. I took an unexpected vacation, so and it looks like I'll be free until at least December. So I don't know.
So looking at your window, you are not in Wyoming. You are in a big city, and I suppose it's New York, right?
Yeah, I'm in New York. My wife and I live here. I've been a New York resident now for 3 years. So we're at like the epicenter of everything. So it's been a rough road for us here in New York.
Right. So how did you live this? You stayed in your apartment mostly. How was the confinement for you guys?
Well, it was hectic. I'm sure you know. I was in Paris when the COVID restrictions started. So I was in Paris doing Manon, waiting for my second performance. And I'm just watching. I happened to be up at like 3 o'clock in the morning one night. They canceled the run the day before, and I was going to come home on a Friday. And I'm watching the news at 3 in the morning, and that's when the president went on TV and said that he's closing the borders starting Thursday at midnight. So my wife and I rushed to get on a plane for me to get home. I got home, and
how did you get a ticket? Was it tough to get a ticket?
Well, I was fortunate. I waited. I want to say like 8 hours on the phone with Delta, and they finally reprogrammed my ticket. So I managed to get a ticket because I had a flight booked later in the month. And once I got home, we went on lockdown, and we've been here ever since. I think we're going on, 90 some days now? And we just started Facebook today. Right.
And then when you arrived, you didn't quarantine yourself or anything like that. How you didn't have to?
We did. We kind of quarantined. Well, we didn't really quarantine ourselves right away because nobody told us we had to, right? So it wasn't until they went on strict lockdown, which I think was like, 3 days later or something. And then we were quarantined. We stayed in our house all the time. We rarely went out. And then when we went out with our masks, with our gloves. And we're fortunate enough, downstairs we have a supermarket, so we didn't have to go far. And then when we came back from the supermarket, we went back in. I mean, it was just, that's been our lives, what we've been doing.
Right. I mean, we were in Dallas, and we had dinner with some donors and who are friends too. And a few days later, they told us, well, we actually have the COVID, So we just had arrived in California. And so we had to really strongly quarantine ourselves. And we didn't get it, although we were together for, 6 hours, on a very small like Manon table, and unfortunately we didn't get it. But that was tough. How do you navigate the tension for you and the hardship for you professionally? I mean, how much are you trying to plan things? How much are you working on your voice? What's your balance there?
I'm working on my voice every day, because every 10 minutes you're being asked to make a video of some sort or something. And so, I've been doing that a lot. It was hard in the beginning. When things started to be canceled, it was hard, because it was the first time, I think, in 10 years where I woke up and didn't have something to prepare for.
Right.
Or having something that you were supposed to do get canceled, for the next 3 months. And then you wake up, you start vocalizing, and you're like, what am I doing it for?
Right. Yeah.
So once I got past that, it became slightly easier, because that was a really hard period. That went on for like 2.5 weeks, I think. And then we did the Met Gala, my wife and I, the at-home gala.
Yes, of course.
In a way, it was cool, because it was actually like we had a concert, we had a performance. So like, I'd be warming up, we're getting dressed to go on and perform. We were rehearsing that week, her and I, together. And I think for the first week, we felt normal. And then we did the performance. We saw all of our friends on the computer. We were able to interact with everybody. So that was cool. And then we're like, oh, well, now what? Now what do we have? So we've been getting into this thing recently. You know, my wife's a violinist. So she was, her and I were doing these songs where we would arrange them for small string groups, and she'd arrange them and play in all the parts, and I'd sing over it. So we make these recordings that been keeping us busy for a little bit. So that's been fun. But planning, I don't know. We're planning as much as we can. What's coming up? I don't know. Hopefully January. We're
yeah, I think that's reasonable, at least for the US, to think January is going to open. I think that's what everybody is counting on now in the operatic world. I mean, you know, obviously that Dallas also has canceled the fall season. We're trying to push as much things to the spring, and the Met has canceled a few weeks ago, as you know, from your wife and yourself, obviously. Can we go in the behind the scene of the Met Gala, because that was just a big operation. I had a feeling like you all got some guidelines on how the camera should be posted and so on, or they let you pretty much do what you wanted.
Well, we were first asked about it by Peter, and first they call you, they email you, and they say, what would you like to sing for this? And I thought Faust, because my wife's a violinist and has that nice
solo. Beautiful solo, yeah.
Yeah, so it works out. So we picked the aria, and then we had maybe a half hour on the phone just for positioning of your device. I mean, some people have more setups than others, obviously. Because some people have been doing this longer. But yeah, so basically they had a little session where they put the computer on a counter or in whatever position, and then they're told you to remember that position, but it's not for another 4 days, right? So we did that, and then we got paranoid, so we started like taping it out like we were like stage crew. So we taped out the where the camera angles are supposed to be, and we did it from there. But it wasn't without. I mean, there were problems. There's my wife, actually. If you ever get a chance to go on her, she has a YouTube channel. She put up a blooper of our Met Gala performance, because 45 seconds prior to us going on, everything stopped working. Our internet stopped working. The speaker that's playing the piano backtrack stopped working, and we couldn't get it to work, and we're just freaking out. And
oh my God!
And I'm trying to
and you're texting them, it's not working, or you say
I'm yelling into the computer. It's not working. It's not working. And they just keep counting down. 35 seconds, get in the position, and I'm beside myself. Because you're going to be on live any second now.
Yeah, and the order is set. Yeah, you cannot say, wait, go to the next. Yeah.
5 seconds before we went live, it came back on. So it was just, it's stressful. As you know, I mean, having to do live art on a computer or via the internet is stressful, because there's so many different complications that can go wrong. The stream could break, the internet could stop. I mean, it's just so many things that you would never have to think about in a performance. And as a performer, you want that few minutes before the performance to just kind of, be in your Zen position and focus. And then you're just trying to block out everything else that could go wrong in the middle of a performance without having to have that extra worry, right?
Right.
It's stressful.
Right. And the stress of the technology added to also the frustration with the fact we are not in contact with a real audience, or that, we work so hard, and then you listen to the result on YouTube because it's going through your phone or your screen, and the sound is just not good enough,
Yeah, so I mean, as a conductor and pianist and everything, you understand how it's, when you're doing a performance live, you're feeling each other, so you're playing off of each other. Some days are better than others, but when you have something going really organic, you can really play with that. And when you're doing something on the internet, you usually have to have it pre-taped. You have to have something playing in the background. There's no.
I don't think we are now at a level technologically where those streaming can really work, unless they are streaming something that is live, live music.
Absolutely.
But streaming with musician in distance, that doesn't work. You and your wife in the same room, but and maybe one day there will be a technology that works, but it's just really like walking with plastic clothes and gloves and trying to do a marathon. Just doesn't work.
Absolutely. That's why people go to the same opera in a run. So they'll go to maybe like, say, doing 9 performances of Traviata. They may go to 3 of those performances because it's live theater. Change, you know, they want that. They get that feeling.
Right. The thing that might stay after COVID are these kind of discussions, as good or as bad as they are, and all the material we have online now of, you know, brainstorming or new content that is not necessarily musical content. And so, as you know, TDO has been very, very active with this, and other companies are doing that. And there are some very good things that have come up from this. And I think they are going to stay after that. It's also a way to reach to different audiences. And then you want to bring these audiences in the hall. Obviously, our industry is violently hit by this. And there is a huge difference in the way Europe is dealing with this and the States, because in Europe, the funding is by the government or the city or the regions. And in the States, it's private. And the box office is much more important. How do you feel about this? And how do you see this impacting, it's a tough question, your career in the future?
Well, it's hard to say, you know, because right now, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, right? So technically we're supposed to open in January, but we still don't know. How it will impact my career, not as badly as it will impact other careers. I mean, because when you get hired for a job, you're usually hired a couple of years out. And I've been in a career for a while and you've been in a career for a while. I think where it will really impact is those people that before COVID were just starting to get momentum, or those people that before COVID were just starting to go into their audition seasons. In something like this, they're trying to now cast for future seasons, right? So because they have all this time, houses have these times, and they're trying to now cast for future seasons. So if you have an audition for these companies and they haven't heard you yet, when you go back, you know, post-COVID, you're now auditioning for opera houses, maybe not for the next 3 seasons, maybe 4 seasons away. So those people that were going to hopefully have jobs in the next year, 2 years, are now not going to have jobs for maybe 3-4 years, right?
Right. Without even talking of the people who, you know, had a career and it got canceled, the opera houses then try to break a deal, or I recast you in the future, and these are positions taken from other people too.
Correct.
You know?
Correct. So I'm fortunate enough in my season coming up, for instance, I was supposed to have a long summer, and I decided to take some of the fall off to begin with. I was supposed to sing at the Met coming up in September, and then I'm going to Napoli, and then I was taking a month off. And thankfully, I believe my Napoli job is still on the table, knock on wood.
I just lost mine, actually. I was supposed to do Carmen starting rehearsal like in a week, and they finally officially canceled. I believe they did, you know. Yeah. But anything is possible in the future. Yeah, anything is possible.
But the bulk of my work here was in the second half of the season where I planned it anyway. So I'm kind of fortunate in that aspect.
Right. And you're working both in the US and in Europe, so you will have always something if Europe starts a little faster or the other way.
You know, but that's something that my manager and I both planned on, was we never wanted to be exclusively, some people like to be exclusively in Europe, or some people like to be exclusively in the United States. And I find that's a big mistake. I feel like you need to disperse your time evenly, because, I mean, you need to have a base in both areas.
Absolutely.
Especially times like this, you know, at times like this, like European houses are opening way before American houses are opening. So because I've been working there and I have a base there, I have a easier chance of someone calling and saying, hey, we're going to schedule this production in now that we're open. Can you come and do it? And that's a benefit. And I feel like a lot of people that have done that don't have that opportunity.
Right. It's very true what you say. I am in the same boat. And this is why I wanted to have a music directorship in the US and a music directorship in Europe. You know, I'm director of the Prague Philharmonia too. And I was in the process actually rebalancing some of my presence in Europe. You know, I work in in Covent Garden, mainly in the operatic world. But at Dutch Opera, I want to do a little more of that just for that reason, because Met Chicago, this is great, but you realize after a while your calendar is full as a conductor very quickly with 4-5 productions in the year, and then people forget about you. You're just not visible anymore. Working in Europe is also very different for a singer, in the sense that the production styles are different, the rehearsal periods are different. So there is a cultural, strong difference between the two. Do you like to work in Europe?
I love to work in Europe. The only thing I don't like about being in Europe is being away from home for so long. It's, a lot of my European friends that work there, that live in Europe, when we have gaps of like 2 weeks, they can travel home on a train or a half an hour flight and be back in plenty of time. I can't do that when I work in Europe. So, so I try not to do really long periods in Europe, but it tends to be difficult because there's so many more houses in Europe than there are in the United States.
Right.
But I love it. I really do. You get to work with a lot more different colleagues. I mean, I feel like in the United States, you see the same people over and over and over again.
That's true. That is so true. Yeah, there is kind of a number of elected people, and it's very hard.
I don't like that. I do. I mean, I love the people I work with in the States also, but I always find whenever I do a production in Europe, there's at least 2 or 3 people I've never met before.
And some of them great.
Yeah. Great. I mean, great singers. And some of the singers in the Young Artist programs are wonderful singers. It's like, I always say there's so much undiscovered talent in Europe. And especially like when you get further east as well, there's so many different singers out there that you've never heard of that it's really incredible.
Right. So Europe, especially Germany, as we know, has a taste for what they call Regi Theater, which means, a really theater stage directions that are important to the operatic world, with sometimes a take on the pieces and on the opera that is really from the side, that is not literal, that try to deconstruct the piece even in some instances. And that's what American conservative call Eurotrash. And I have, I love theater. I really love theater, and I rather have a director that takes a risk, as long as he understands the music and the connection between the libretto and the music. I don't have a problem with transposing it. I don't have a problem with working against it. As a singer, where do you stand in those stylistic positions?
Well, I always set myself with a rule, right? So I don't mind new productions at all. I don't mind far out productions, as long as they make sense, okay? And so you have to, in that aspect, the director has to be willing to make some compromises, or at least get you to really understand it. Because none of those productions work if you're working with a singer that doesn't believe in the production and doesn't like it.
Right, and works against it, yeah.
And works against it, correct. So I always find this thing where, like, I will try anything in a rehearsal, right? Even if it doesn't work, it doesn't feel comfortable. If there's like a 4-week rehearsal period, for 3 weeks, I will give my best to try to do what the director wants. But come that 4th week leading up to the show, if it's still not working, the director has to make changes with you, If you try something and try something and try something and it just doesn't work, they have to be willing to make a change. But at the same time, you can't go to day 1 and look at a production and the director say, well, this is my idea. And someone say, well, you piece of shit, this isn't Bohème. I'm not doing it. You can't do that. You can't, there has to be a compromise. I mean, not everybody likes what you like, and you don't, and you're not going to like what everybody else likes. So there has to be a compromise in theater, especially.
Right. I have seen situations where I'm like you. I never say no. I say, let's try this, even if there are technical issues associated to it. And if the director is smart or the singer is smart, they're going to sit at the table with you and say, actually, let's rethink this. There have been cases where I was convinced it was not going to work, and it actually did work, or a concept all of a sudden made sense because the piece is so strong. There is so much that attacking the piece from the side, you have more juice coming out of it. And something that you never thought about, but that is connected to the inner working of the piece. And I love that.
Absolutely. And you could probably understand this. I feel like the directors should also be able to read the music and listen to the music. Because like a lot of composers like Verdi, Puccini, they have action written into the music. So especially some of those scenes, they have, it's there, you can't ignore that. And when a director ignores it to create a vision that's completely opposite of what the piece is, that's where we get into the problem. And that's where it gets controversial. I think that's where also you lose the audience.
Right, and it depends on the repertoire. It's also sometimes, you know, they don't necessarily read music or read it well, but they have a sense of the connection between the libretto, the drama, the words, the situation of the action and the music, and they have that instinctively, and that's great. And sometimes the connection doesn't necessarily need to be bar by bar. The connection can be scene by scene according to the repertoire. And you need to have that sensitivity in the director. And some of them are really willing to work in a collaborative way. And I think the best production is when the conductor is interested in the drama and the stage director is interested in the music. And that's to the benefit of the singers, you know, when they have that band.
If everybody's on the same page from day one, you can really create something, you know.
Amazing, yeah.
It just takes one or two people, whether it's the conductor, the director, or the singer, to not like something and protest it in a way that makes everything uncomfortable.
So how do you work with, let's say, a soprano, a mezzo, a bass, or that's difficult with you, or that doesn't really help what you have to do and your needs? What do you do in that case?
Well, look, at the end of the day, I've worked with a lot of difficult people. I mean, we all have, but it's not, I mean, it becomes like second nature after a while, right? So you realize that you're not the difficult person, and that not only, but you want to try to make this situation as comfortable as possible. There's been times where I've had to help direct the show because the director and one of the sopranos wasn't getting along, and at the end of the day, I could both see what they wanted, so I was able to filter out the junk and then say, look, why don't we try this approach? Why don't we try this approach? The conductor coming up to me after that rehearsal and saying, well, they seem to really be listening to you. I need you to follow me so that the soprano will now follow me because she's not watching me and she's following you. And it's like, okay, so now I'm wearing a director cap, the colleague cap, and now the conducting cap. But you know, I just leave it alone. You know, people have so many different things. They're usually not mad about the people they're working with. There's something insecure about them or in their lives that make them aggravated, right?
Right.
So you have to realize that it's their insecurity and not yours. And you just kind of have to filter it out. I don't, at the end of the day, you know what works for you as a singer because you've coached it, you've studied it, you've sung it. So if they're just being difficult, you just kind of have to zone that out, do your own thing, and just get yourself into the position that you know is going to make your performance successful and help the other colleagues that maybe are being affected by that person as well.
Right. How does that work with conductors? Because conductors can be sometimes a little stiff with what they want, or they don't necessarily understand your vocal needs. What do you do if there's a conductor that doesn't breathe, that doesn't get the tempo your voice needs?
I had that once, and I walked off stage because it was just to the point where it was just so bad. But I've only had.
You walked off stage during rehearsal or during performance?
During a rehearsal, it was a dress rehearsal. And,
with orchestra. Wow.
Oh yeah, and it was just because the way he was doing it, like we talked about it in rehearsal, and then every rehearsal after that, he just ignored it. So he would speed up the arias when I asked him to pull it back, and then there were a couple times where I needed to breathe, and it was clearly in the music, and he wouldn't do it because he said he'd rather hear Puccini's than me. So I turned to him when he said that, and I said, well, I hope you know Puccini because he's going to be doing the performance tomorrow. But I haven't had that. You know, I have this thing about conductor. I feel like ones that don't follow you, or that can't collaborate with you are insecure with themselves because they don't know how to adjust what they know.
They don't have the technique for it. Yeah.
It's the same thing with singers too. They only know a certain way, which is why they can't adjust to a conductor that wants them to go a different way. And then you have good conductors that work with you and can shape something with you. And then you have great conductors that get you to do what you can't do and make you think that you did it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
right. That's a very good way of putting it. I think that third level is actually a very important one, where all of a sudden you get better because of that collaboration. And I always say I'm not accompanying a singer. We get together in the same path, but if I'm accompanying anything, it's a voice. I'm working with a voice beyond what the singer feels about it. And I can know some things about the breathing of the voice going there that, okay, I can stretch this, or I have to move this, otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's the thing people don't realize. It's their own insecurity that usually gets in the way, right? Because 90% of the time, everyone in that room wants you to succeed. Everyone in that room wants to create something special, wants to create something more than just what's on the page, you know? They want to bring it, and they want to really shape phrases and make art. So once you get past your own ego, everything is usually smooth sailing, you know? Right.
And I think people want to do, you're right, people mostly want to do what's right. When you are in houses where there are very high stakes and you feel you're being judged all the time, that makes people a little more crazier, a little more sensitive. And I always say, you know, they arrive to those houses and they feel they're at the top, and they still want to climb, so they jump on their feet up and down like crazy ants.
That's our profession, right? You spend years and years and years developing what you do, and then research and lessons and coachings and rehearsals, and then you put it on stage, and people that have never done it before judge you. That's what we do. It's like all the things that you do, you're out there to be judged.
And the worst.
Take it personally. I mean, some people just have a different taste than what you do, so you can't take it personally.
No, you can't. And the worst judge is most of the time we are the most severe with what we do, you know. So that's, I know that, you know that, and so that's why we try to help each other. Just moving to a different topic, but still has to do with solidarity and being humans. How did you, if you are comfortable talking about this, how did you process the latest events with the murder of George Floyd and other people, and the kind of discussion and awareness it brought in our industry and in the country in general?
Well, look, it's a discussion that needs to happen. I mean, it's a discussion that we've had in our industry many times, and I've had it with many of my African-American colleagues that are really incredible. And I've known about that conversation. I've had it with them, and I understand it. But you can't change, it's hard to change something in our industry that's so small when there's such a bigger problem of it in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So we can change it all we want in our industry, but it's never really going to settle until it's changed in the world. Because once you walk out those doors, it's going to happen again, and then it's going to be reissued. And look, we all saw the video, and it was horrendous. It was horrendous, and I think that was just the icing on the cake for everybody. Something that really brought awareness, and what made it even more aware was the COVID, because we're all at home, we're all quarantined, we're all watching TV, we're out of work, out of jobs, so we're all home, and it's very rare that happens, because usually there's not as much awareness to something, especially issues, because people are working, people are not home, people can't see it. And the fact that we were all home and we all saw it, it brought such a wide attention to an issue that just has needed outreach like it is now.
Right.
I think that's the silver lining of COVID, you know?
COVID made it harder. The fact it was filmed, unfortunately, gave awareness to people, and we are in more and more in a visual culture. I think what you say about the bigger society and our industry, or the world in general, I think our industry is a microcosm that is the expression of the macrocosm. But I would say, you know, we need to be ambitious too. It's like we need to be agents of change. And I think that's what art is. We need to work with our communities. We need to have a purpose. We need to know why we are doing opera and who we are doing opera for. So I think that from that point of view, the situation has brought an awareness that is extremely important, and to change, I would say, among the white powers in our industry that say, well, actually, it's not enough to say, I want to fight racism or I'm against racism. It's also, well, it's my problem. I need to be one of the agents of change there.
Absolutely, and that's the thing about change. Everyone is afraid to make change, but it only takes a few people to do it and then others to follow. And then once change is made, it's no longer change, it's normal.
Right. And to the answer, to the question of, well, the industry is in so much trouble and we need to figure it out and we are losing audiences and so on. We can't take risk now. Well, it's not like it was working so well until now. So let's really make changes.
But that's really act. And it's about communities too, right? So it's not about just like in our community as an opera community. It's not just performing works by Black composers, which is really important, or putting more Black singers on stage. It's like taking what we do and putting it into the communities that are not able to get those chances because those communities are not being funded or developed. And that's
right. And up to now, and that's where we as leaders have to think about this. It was, if you are, really looking into it, most of the time, okay, check. I did community engagement. I did my quota, unspoken quota. I think it's really like, okay, I want to reach out to these audiences in order to understand what these audiences want. Maybe I need to talk to them too, and not bring them something from a position of knowledge and say, you should like this because this is the real thing. And that's where obviously commissioning, stories or opera that would connect to that. I think for me, that's the next step. It's probably a complicated step, but it needs to come from these communities too. It needs to be really in a dialogue where we are listening to that.
Absolutely, and it's about holding all these companies accountable that within this movement that said, we're going to make a change and we stand by you.
Yeah.
Well, that's
a lot of empty statements there. Yeah.
Great for now. So from there, hold them to it. Make sure that they make the changes. Like we have to hold everyone accountable, not only our opera companies, but our leaders too. All of our per week, all of our leaders that have ever run on platforms of saying they're going to help the Black community that didn't, or that they're going to help clean out police departments that didn't. All those leaders that ran on those campaigns need to be held responsible for that because they haven't done it and they haven't done enough of it. So, I mean, and they won their votes because of it. They used that platform. And I kind of feel that that's racist in a way, that they're using a cause to get themselves elected. That's an issue. And and it's great if you use the cause as long as you do it. But if you don't do it, you're no better than the problem. You're part of the problem. So
right.
Being all accountable and making sure that in the future they get the job done. And we can't. And this just shows that people are tired of it. They need change. It's not that they want it. Yeah, everyone wants it, but now we need it.
Right, we need it, and I mean, on a very personal level, this has brought a lot of questions about the meaning of what we do, and I think we need to listen a little more. We know too much, and we need to listen a little more, and take risks together, and yes, it's uncomfortable and difficult, but I really think we have no other choice to do it, and let's embrace it, including in the difficulty. Fortunately, I think if you are honest in your art too, you can reach a level of humanity, of love for humanity that is so strong that it can help you navigate these waters. I mean, and personally, I always go to these places. If I think of the darkest things around me, art is definitely a very strong comfort. That is not to say that I don't have to have that social conscience at the same time, but I really think there is a voice here that needs to be heard, and that is a voice of communication and so on. What was your first connection to music?
Well, my first connection, I was a trumpet player for 20 years, and
right.
Yeah, and I kind of got into music because my cousins were into it, and my sister was a violinist in it, and so I went to the music school. I went to my school. I went to the music program and said I want to learn an instrument, and I wanted to play the saxophone because at that time the Simpsons were popular, and
of course.
So I wanted to play the saxophone, and my cousin Brian actually played the saxophone at that point. So I went in, and he said, "Well, the only thing I have is like this. It was like this big baritone sax, and it was gigantic. And at that point, I was only about this big, and I was like, well, do I have to carry it back and forth every day? So yeah, if you're going to play an instrument, you have to practice. So I said, do you have anything smaller? And he said, well, I have a cornet. So he gave me a cornet, and I just, something about it I fell in love with, right? There was something about being able to produce these tones that was just, it blew my mind. So I would practice day and night, every day, and I fell in love with it. And I took some lessons and played through middle school, high school, and it wasn't until high school where I started singing because I auditioned for the chorus to help train my ear. And because my trumpet teacher kept saying, if you can learn to blend in a chorus using your ear and sight read music, you'll be a better musician. You'll be able to, your intonation will be better when you play. You'll be able to blend better as a group. And so everything's about hearing. Music is about hearing. So, so I did that, but I didn't do it really well because the guy that sat next to me in the chorus in the tenor section was the guy that was getting all the leads in the high school musicals. So my job was to then try to sing louder than him just to piss him off, which I'm glad I did because the chorus director discovered my voice and said, oh, you really have a voice, you should do it. And I worked with him for a little bit, and I auditioned for the school musical, and I got in, and it was a whole different feeling, you know, being on stage, singing, acting, still being sort of part of the orchestra because you're making music with them. There was just so many different aspects of it that I love. So I decided to go to undergrad for voice, and that's where I discovered the voice of Fritz Wunderlich and changed my whole career path in general. It was just something about the beauty of his sound and the way he phrased music. I heard him sing the Dichterliebe, and it was just, it was unbelievable.
That Wunderlich recording of the Dichterliebe is one of my favorites.
Essential.
Yeah, absolutely essential. When did you realize this could be a career, this could be a profession, you could make a living out of this, and you had enough talent to do that?
I think when somebody pays you for the first time, right? So you're doing it because you love it, and then.
And when was that?
I sang in it's a funny story actually. My first job was given to me by my trumpet teacher, a man named Bill Shiloh, who hired me to sing with his orchestra in Ocean City, New Jersey, called the Ocean City Pops Orchestra. And I thought he was just doing it because I was a student and he liked me, but he didn't. He actually thought I was good. He paid me $200 afterwards. I mean, I was like 17 at that point. And then fast forward to now, where I'm married with my wife, who's a violinist. Her first job as a violinist was with her sister with the same orchestra, Ocean City Pops Orchestra. So
wow.
So it's crazy, but yeah, I think when I got paid for the first time, it was great. I was like, oh, I could probably make a living as this. And then as I started to sing, I started to get more jobs, and people started to take notice, and I loved it. You know, it's funny. It just, I think you just find yourself.
But did you ever question that was sustainable and you could make a living out of it, or you just didn't think about it? You went from gig to gig at the beginning, and you understood, okay, that's working.
I didn't think about it because, you know, I had my own goals, right? It's very true. I had my own goals and what I wanted to achieve, and I wasn't going to stop to do that. Even if people said you couldn't do it. I did have people say that I wouldn't do that. I had a doctor. Of course. I had a doctor in Philadelphia that thought he was a voice teacher and gave me one of those nasal scopes or whatever. And after he sprayed me down, my nose was numb, my throat was numb. He had me in his office, and he thought he was a voice teacher, and he says, okay, now sing a 5-note scale. And he starts on low C, for a tenor is low, after being numbed and having all that shit in your mouth, and then goes up to middle G, and then goes, well, your voice isn't that big. You may not have a big career. You may only sing in like C B houses, but not really major houses. And I said, okay. And I left the office. I said, fuck you. And I never went to him again as a doctor because
you should have screamed a high C to his ears, you know?
You always have that. Like I always say, in this business, for every one person that loves you, there's probably two that does not. So, as long as you have your goals and you're happy with yourself and what you're doing, why not?
So what were your goals? Were they like, I want to sing this at the Scala, at the Met, or what?
Well, I went to when I was an undergrad, a friend of mine took me to Villaume at the Met. And I went and I was like, I want to sing on that stage. That's going to be my goal. I believe it was Villaume with Frank Lopardo, and Frank was great in this production. And I was like, that's my goal. I want to do that. And then I was auditioning for grad schools. And I knew a couple people from AVA, and I said, that's where I want to go to school. That's one of the places I want to be. So I worked my ass off, and I got into the school, luckily. And then while I was at AVA, I went to see Matt Polenzani, or before I went to AVA, I went to see Matt Polenzani win the Tucker Award. He won the Tucker Award that year. And I said, I want to win that award. I'm going to work my ass off to do that. And all those things came true. So I really feel like if you're mentally on a track and you really, really focus on it, you can achieve it. Anyone can achieve it.
Right. And you had the chance to have a natural material, contrary to what that doctor says, that was extraordinary in the sense of you have a very identifiable color of your voice. It's very solid from top to bottom, and you do have that volume, and you had all the, you can act on stage, you don't look too shabby. That's whole, and you have some brain. So that was good. I have seen singers with much less natural voice, color, and talent than you, and still have a very good career just because of what you talk about, setting goals. Absolutely. Not hearing the naysayers and the haters, and find their niche with the little voice they had, and be spectacular artists. And the other way around, voices of God that are lazy and untitled, and they don't go anywhere.
Well, like I said, if you get a handful of, like, say, 10 classical fans, classical opera lovers, classical music lovers, they're all going to have 10 different tastes. So just because, like Luciano Pavarotti, to me, I think is one of the best tenors of our generation. It's unbelievable. Of the time, yeah. Maybe 90% of the people agree with me, but there's 10% of people out there that didn't like him. But so there's always going to be a patron or someone that loves that singer or what they do, or something that person does, that musician does, that moves you in a way that may not move other people. So as long as you have that, as long as you have the backbone to go through a sea of no's until you get to a yes, you will have a career. It's possible.
Well, and this goes back, and this has, huge ramification on a philosophical point of view, on a human point of view, but it's also actually quite factual in the sense, like you were saying earlier, we need to prepare mentally before performance. I really thought at first, this visualize before you play, this is a little funky and not to use other words. And then I started doing some of this. It actually works. You visualize positively something that's going to happen, musical, artistic, a reaction you're going to have, and it does happen. And I do believe it's the same thing somehow with the career, if you are smart in setting those goals, and it can really, really, really help you. And I have seen this again and again with singers. Where do you, obviously, you started with lighter roles and you're getting into more and more dramatic roles. Where are you in that path, and what are the roles you would like to do? You're still very young, even for, let's say, a tenor. Where are the roles you would like to, what are the roles you would like to study?
Well, I think the heaviest role I did today is Carmen with you.
Right.
So for me, that was the biggest role I've done. And I have another Carmen coming up next summer. and I wanted to do it again. But Carmen, as you and I both know, can be a tricky role. It can be done with a lyric tenor, or it can be done with a more dramatic tenor. It's all about the focus of it.
Right.
Coming up, I actually have a Don Carlo coming up in a couple of years that
nice.
I'm finally wanting to try. I've been putting it off and putting it off because I didn't think I don't want to say my voice was ready, my temperament wasn't ready, right? So when you do something like a role like Don Carlo, it's such a long role and it can get dramatic, but your temperament when you get tired is to want to push a little bit more. So come off right out of the gate, you have to be very calm, not so much in your body, but in your voice. And just getting to the place where you're not going to push on it at all. And just realize that your own sound and your own color and your own squealo is going to take you over the orchestra, and you're going to be heard. And I feel like that's something that gets a lot of people in trouble when they go into the dramatic repertoire, because you want to use your voice as action, and then you end up giving more than you should be giving, and over a run of like, say, 6 or 7 performances, you get tired, and then...
And how do you balance that? You're talking about dramatic intensity through pushing the voice and putting the drama in the voice, but you still, don't you, need to deliver the drama from a pure dramatic point of view, a theatrical point of view. How do you negotiate that? Like saving the calmness that the voice needs and the kind of pressure you need without overblowing that, but still delivering the madness of the performance.
Well, that's the thing that you have to work it on. Like, so you have to dissect it, right? So if you go in with your voice and the dramatics at the same time, something's going to go wrong, right? So what you do is for me anyway, you have to work the aria or the opera into your voice ahead of time, way ahead of time. So something like Don Carlo for me, I have it in 3 years. I will slowly start to work on it now for the next 3 years to get it to the point where it's second nature, where you have the feeling in your throat of muscle memory and ease. So when you go into the dramatics of it, you can forget about it and not push your voice. You know what I mean? I feel like some people that are going into bigger repertoire will wait too long to work on it, and then you're then trying to be dramatic and you're trying to get it into your voice, and the two of them collide like this, and it's just not a good situation. So I'll work on it for hours with my teacher, hours with the coach, way before I even start the dramatic aspect of it. So this way, when I get to the room, I can focus on staging and getting what I have to get across in my body, and not using my voice as the dramatic.
Right. And it's Martha Argerich who was saying, you know, in order to play 100% on stage, you need to have rehearsed 160%. And then,
you have to be able to play something or sing something under any circumstance, right? And you have to just be able to, if at need, go on autopilot with it, because sometimes you do that. Something may happen in the audience, something may happen. And you have to have that feeling in your voice and that confidence in your voice and in your singing, that if anything goes wrong, you're still in that zone. You're still on that.
Right. And I remember performances. I think we did Moby Dick, which is a piece we both love and that you own, and it's a genius piece from Gene Shear and Jake Hagee, and we had the chance to do it together in Dallas. And I think there was a problem with the sets at one point that were not in the right place, and you were right there and just you sung your thing. You know, and the whole world was collapsing around you, and you sang and sing. And I think that is absolutely essential in what we do. And so, who are your role models as singers?
Well, role models. I have role models of people today, and I have ones that are back in the past, right?
So let's start with the past. Yeah.
So my past role models are, like I said, Fritz Wunderlich, just the color of the voice, what he could do, the Fach that he could choose to do, it just blew my mind. Mostly the color of his voice, because it was beautiful. It was like, you know, it's like seeing gold spun in the air, you know? So there was that. There was Tucker, because Tucker was one of these guys that could sing, you know, Cozy one night. The next night he would sing Ballo. Next night he would sing Carmen or Aida. He had that. I mean, that's genius to me. Corelli was a god. Corelli had a voice that was like a mystery to people. So he could open his throat, make these huge sounds, and then he could also bring them back into piano, which wasn't fake. It was on his full voice. So he had these things. The Stefano I listened to a lot, not because of technique, but because he was great with text. Like there was something he could do with text that none of the other ones could do. And it was like listening to him just say lines was an art form, right?
Okay, so you are talking about tenor voices. Do you feel like as a singer were all your teachers tenors, and do you think you can learn from a soprano or a bass?
No, my first teacher was a soprano. In undergrad. Her name was Pat Stasis. She was a soprano. And then my second former teacher was a tenor. And now my current teacher, Tony Manoli, I don't think he's a singer at all.
He's not really a singer himself,
no,
yeah. But
no.
I don't think I want to hear his voice, Tony, but he's an amazing coach. He's a brilliant musician and a great voice doctor and helper.
I think as long as people understand the voice and how it works, for each particular voice part, I don't think it matters if you're a man or a woman. I mean, or a tenor or a mezzo or bass or baritone. I think as long as you understand the function of the voice, because the voice functions for men pretty much the same, right? It's just where you go up in your passaggio, where you would cover, where you would turn the voice over. Sopranos, you deal with more head voice than you, or mezzos more head voice than you would with men. So I think as long as you understand the construction of the voice and how breathing works and producing a tone, I don't think it really matters what you are. Because I mean, look, there's some tenors that can't teach tenors worth to shit, and there are. I mean,
and they can sing beautifully, but they don't, and the other way around. You know,
just like I said, teaching is its own art, right? So like, just because you're a great singer doesn't mean you're a great teacher. Just because you're a great teacher doesn't mean you're a great singer.
Right. I have seen in our profession that people who had to conceptualize their technique or even struggle with some of their technique, they are better at explaining to other people how it works, actually. And the people for whom it's natural, they are not going to be able to break it down.
Well, not just that. It's not that so much they can't break it down. It's that they will after a while, because everyone that's a natural singer usually hits that point where their voice starts to change. And that's when, if you're not ready for it, you need to really seek help and help you get into the bigger rep. Because you can't hear what you're doing. Like, what I hear is not what you hear. And so you need someone with a good set of ears that can help guide you through that.
I think that's the most important thing, actually. Yes, absolutely. What have you taught yourself? Have you ever taught?
No, I've tried. I've tried. I can work with people. I can coach people. I just feel like, as much as I know, I've learned it from other people, right? So while those people are still alive, I would feel like I'm doing a disservice not sending that person to the person that I studied with. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it just feels like, because also I respect them, it feels like I'm taking business from them in a way. I will help people that if I've worked with them and they say, hey, can you help me figure out this? Or a young artist that I'm at a company that I'm working at says, hey, do you have time to work? I will gladly do that. But I couldn't. And, I thought about it now during this period, because I have nothing, we have no income. And I was like, well, if I have no income and other people have no income, then people that are not doing as much as me or someone else have less income to deal with. So I can't honestly take money from people that are struggling at the same time. So I haven't done it. And I honestly feel like teaching over the computer at the moment is just...
Right. I think the only one who can, that's what all the teachers I know say, except for the one who already were doing it before and are used to working with you. But of course, it's not ideal.
I've never agreed with it. I understand at this time you have to do what you can do. It works better for people that have been with a teacher prior to this.
Exactly.
For a little while. If you're starting with someone, I don't think it does anything. And I honestly feel like music schools in the future, people that have to sustain this over the computer for long periods of time, once it's over, they're going to have to go back and restudy, because you just don't.
Right. Right. Well, and all of this because we need to go back on stage. We need to be able to do what we love. And this is not an option for society. This is something that is absolutely vital. People need to be respected. People need to be fed, but their souls need to be fed too.
And you know, it's funny too, speaking of that, it's like we have a lot of mutual friends on Facebook and things like that. And they all hold their leaders and are so accountable for a lot of things, but none of them ever post that none of them are doing anything for the arts. And no one ever says that, like, have you ever noticed the common thread with everybody in politics right now is none of them support the arts. Yep. So I think that's a conversation that we need to speak about in the future, everyone as a collective community, that we need to encourage them to think more about our community and the arts community, because we're the only ones that are going to suffer for it. I mean, people can work from home, people can go back to work this week. We're the only ones that can't go back to work for months.
Right. I'm more optimistic in the sense that the community is going to crave for opera and for the arts, and if we answer properly with honesty and a resolve, this is going to provide changes in many ways, internally and externally.
I agree, but I do think that the arts over the next few months, with all the closures and people being out of work, they're going to need some sort of help.
Right.
I mean, in order to get us to that point, we need to be thought of in this period, because our lives have stopped completely. Everyone across the board, right. And as you know, laying people off left and right, it's not because you want to, it's because you have to keep it open. And right. So I think people need to really urge their leaders, even if they think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, they're not doing anything for the arts. They need to really encourage them to step up and help the community.
Amen to that. Stephen, it's been amazing talking to you. Thank you for your time. Can't wait to make music together with you, and hopefully not through a computer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So lots of big hug to you and your wife, and thank you for doing this. You have a good day.
See you. You too.